How many times do I do that? I mute the mic and I forget to turn the darn thing back on. Anyway, you should be able to hear me now. Because I have fixed it. I had the mute button still on, because I'm an idiot. Yes, I know, no audio, no audio, no audio, no audio, no audio, no audio, and no audio. Yes, I know, you guys should be able to hear me now. Where was I? What was I saying? Yes, welcome to Songwriting Simplified. I'm on my own again tonight. The reason being is Jonny had his, I think he had his second COVID shot today. So he was just feeling a little bit under the weather. So I said, go, take the night off, chill, go and relax. And he should be right as rain. No problem, I would think. Thank you, Billy. Yes, I have unmuted my mic. So you should all be able to hear me now, which is great. So, how is everybody doing? I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you, Billy. Good. Thanks for confirming that. Yes. I hope everybody is well. So tonight, we're going to do kind of a Q&A. I do have a couple of things I want to talk about and show you that I think are important to developing our craft as songwriters. And they're just basically useful little techniques that you can employ to just change things up, change things, add in a little bit of extra flavor, add in a little surprise for your listeners, and to, be able to create effective support for your lyrics in your music. Because the most effective songwriting features musical devices that support what the lyric is conveying to the listener. For example, if you have a line in your lyric where you talk about a ship sinking, or somebody rolling down a hill or something, there are musical devices that you can use to help support that concept and reinforce it for the listener. For example, you can have a descending bass line. So you could have, seeing as it's kind of you're talking about a ship going down, so it's quite a dark subject. So if you're in a major key, hang on a minute. There we go. So if you're in a major key, it's going to be a little bit bright for a dark subject like the ship going down. So you could either go to the relative minor. So if we're in C major, then that would be A minor. So you could either completely change key temporarily by doing this, by going C, E over G sharp, A, and then you could do a descending bass line to D over F sharp, then G, and then that get you back to C again for, the next bit. But the descending bass line will give you that sense of going down. So, A over G sharp, A with G in the bass to D with F sharp, and then G, G7 takes you back to C again. So there are a variety of different little devices you can do, like a little descending bass line, but keeping the same chord. So that's a little device that will help reinforce that kind of concept of, something descending, something going downhill, Jack and Jill, maybe you're, resetting that little story about Jack and Jill. And there's lots of references to going uphill and downhill. So you can illustrate that with music. So let's say you want to talk about going upwards and, kind of onwards and upwards. You want to talk about going from something dark into something light. A key change is something that you can do that will help convey that, but you could also change the mode. So if the subject matter of your song is dark, So you're on G, for example, G minor. I just played G minor just because that's where my fingers landed on the keyboard. But so if you're on G minor, and the song is quite dark, so maybe let's set it up with some dark kind of chords. So we're quite dark, but we want to talk about going from this darkness to something much brighter. So we could go to the 4 major, which would be C major in this case, from G minor. And we could do that by, instead of how we did with the going down, have a descending bass line, we could have a climbing bass line instead. So we could go G, you could go G, not G over A because that's A11, so you go G, A minor, G over B to C, and then you could keep that going. It's A over C sharp to D, but then you want to go kind of maybe back to your darkness, so then you could go your, and then you go back to your darkness that way, because maybe you're going some, the brightness is a temporary thing, so you could go. Now you're back in your G minor dark territory again. And that's a device, again, which you can kind of use to illustrate kind of coming out of darkness into light, or from a darker subject into a happier subject, albeit maybe that's a temporary thing for your song. So ascending bass lines, descending bass lines, changing mode from minor to major, and vice versa, will help illustrate those kind of devices. Another thing you can use, and this doesn't really get used a lot in the modern era, shall we say. Doesn't get used a lot in modern songwriting, but certainly you would get this in kind of like the classical period. So kind of, late Haydn, early Mozart, Handel, Haydn, Mozart, maybe a little bit early Beethoven, but mostly we're talking kind of the Mozartian period, at the early part of that period. So, maybe we're talking, the 1760s, 1770s, this kind of device comes up. But it was very, very popular in the period preceding the classical period, the Baroque period, and Bach and Palestrina and people like that made use of this. And it's a French device called the Tierce de Picardie, and it's called the Tierce de Picardie. Basically means the Picardy third, and it gets its name from the kind of that region of France where there's lots of wine is produced there, the Picardy third. And what does this mean? This means kind of ending on, if you're in a minor key, ending on a major chord, and vice versa. Or, whether the whole piece of music or a section of your piece of music. So if we go back to that G minor thing again. There's the Picardy third right there, because you're expecting me to go to the G minor, but I didn't. I went to G major instead. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is the inverse of that. So if you're in if you're in a major key. So let's do this in D major. That time I went to the D minor instead of the D major, and so it provides a little kind of contrast, either a glimmer of hope or a glimpse of melancholy, like a hint of melancholy. So there you go. Those are a couple of devices that you can use to spice up your songs a bit and kind of bring out some emotion to your lyrics by, changing key, changing mode. The pickety third is another good option. Descending and ascending bass lines will all help. Other things that can help are pedal points. Pedal points are great. I love pedal points. I use them quite a lot. What is a pedal point? Well, there's two different types of pedal point. The first one is where the pedal, which is a continuous note, well, not necessarily continuous, but, it's a continually played note in the bass with chords changing over the top. So, for example, what those are designed to do is they're designed to build tension to an ultimate sense of resolution, which is what we did there, because we were using G, which is kind of the 5-7 going to 1 ultimately. We just kind of fiddled about with some chords on the top, But you can do an inverse pedal point. And this is where the pedal point is up here with the chords changing underneath it. And again, it's another tension building device. So, for example, let's take just the note D. What I want to do is I want to find as many ways to harmonize this note as I can. So let's start with the obvious, so kind of a D major triad. Obscure. A little bit of dissonance brought in there. And we're back to that kind of nice B flat major 7. And all I'm doing is I'm keeping this note going at the top and changing the chords underneath. And again, it's another tension provider, which is what unifies all of those little devices that I have given you. The changing of mode, changing of key, ascending and descending bass lines, pedal points, they're all designed to do one thing, and that is draw out the emotion of your song. So I hope that all of those little devices are helpful, useful for you. If they are, then please do hit the like button. That would help me a lot. And also please do say so in the chat as well. So we will shift up gears in the show now to your questions. And if you want to kind of have that gone over in more detail, then, or you want to revisit it because I've kind of gone through those quite quickly, then you can certainly watch this again on replay and just kind of pause it where you need to and try it out for yourself. So I hope that was useful. Let's go and take a look at the chat. And before I start anything, I should see who's here. Music to Motion is here. Marcos is here. Tony is here. John Edgar. Thomas over in the Philippines is here as well. Who else do we have? You guys were chatting before the show. DJ Big Red 81. He says that's what you said 10 minutes ago. That's hilarious. Thank you. Sean Aaron is here. Kevin's Guitar Stories. Martin Weeks. Lockdown Band is here as well. Bops New York, or I'm assuming that's what NY stands for. You guys were telling me there was no audio. Yep, I know. I had the mute button on again. Mika is here. He says, now whip it into shape it up, get straight, go forward, move ahead, try to detect it. It's not too late to whip it up good. Hello all. Yeah, very nice. I like that, Mika. That's very cool. And Louis over at Alps Media says, late again. Yes. How many late marks need to go in the register against your name this month? I'm kidding. Let's see. Billy Morgan is here. Marcos says, I mind the sound very deep, normally minor chords, my preference. Also a great structure about message with marketing lines to catch people to listen. Yeah, okay. And Mika's quoting song lyrics. Peter Brooks says, for many years I was a Cakewalk user, and one of the things that I still use it for is finding the path of all my VSTs. I really wish Studio One had this feature. You can find your VSTs very, very easily. It's in Studio One, and I can show you that. So if I go over to my screen, and this will show you exactly where everything is. So Studio One on Windows, it's options, or Studio One preferences on a Mac, locations, VST plugins. In my case, I only have one. C program files, VST plugins, because all of my plugins are pretty much VST3. But yeah, that's where the path for all of my plugins is. No, the path is singular. The plugins are plural. Therefore, it is one path. Therefore, it is singular. Yes. So yes, that is where all my plugins are, and this gets scanned at startup. And that just means all of these guys over here are going to get scanned at startup. And I've got plugins from FabFilter, Isotope, Klangerhelm, Plugin Alliance, as well as our very own Presonus plugins. And I got some more coming as well. I just need to actually get the account set up for those. But yes, that's where you find all your paths. Studio One options or Studio One preferences, VST plugins. If you do not have this tab, but you in your account you have Studio One 5 Professional, but you're not seeing this VST plugins tab, it's because you have activated Studio One as Studio One Artist or Studio One Prime. And you can rectify that pretty easily. Again, go into Studio One and then go into Studio One Activation, activate my purchase version of Studio One, or activate with Persona Sphere. And then when you go to activate my purchase version of Studio One, you can select your specific Studio One 5 Professional license, and then you hit activate, and Studio One will restart and activate the correct license. If you're not sure whether you're in the right one, you can go to Help and About Studio One, and it will tell you Studio One Professional or Studio One Artist or Prime or whatever it is. But yes, if you're not seeing the VST tab, it's because you are in Studio One Prime, unless you have Studio One 5, of course, because the VST tab is now available to you in Studio One 5 Artist. So I hope that that helps answer that question. Let's go back over and see. Let's go see what else is going on in the chat here. Mika says Songwriting Simplified tonight, bipolar songwriting. I suppose it could be interpreted that way. For sure. John Edgar makes a very interesting point here. He says many of Chopin waltzes and mazurkas, really a lot of dancehall folk music style. Yes, mazurkas are very much European, Russian in particular, folk styles, although Chopin was not Russian. But yes, he uses minor tonality, and often with that pickety third at the end. As I said, it doesn't really tend to get used that much in popular music these days. Occasionally you'll find it, but where you do find it, it is usually utterly cheesy and not a very good application of the device. When the device is done really well, it doesn't sound cheesy. You know when you've really gone totally over the top when you hear this. Which would have been fine in the late Baroque, early Classical periods. You would have got lots of applause for doing that. But nowadays, 2021, that's not so good. A little bit cheddar, a little bit Parmesan, a little bit brie, a little bit Danish blue. You know what I mean. Let's see. Okay, I think I've reached the end of the chat. Because I think you guys are talking amongst yourselves. Peter Brooks says, I have 7 paths. Cool. If you have 7 paths, that's cool. I only have 1. But some people have more than that, maybe because they have other DAWs, and other DAWs have different ways of organizing their stuff. For example, on Cubase, there is a specific Steinberg folder that VST plugins need to go into. So you may find that that is if you have shared plugins that you use on both, that you may have plugins in that Steinberg folder, and you may be scanning that particular folder as well. Or you may have other plugins on, a secondary hard drive, for example. I don't recommend doing that, but, if you need to, if needs must, then certainly you can run your plugins from that particular location. And if you do that, then yes, you'll need to add that to the VST plugins section there. Let's see. Jonny asks a very interesting question. He says, is PreSonus happy about how Sphere is coming along with the workspace feature? The workspace feature, as with PreSonus Sphere itself, is very, very young in terms of development. It was launched on July 7th last year. So it is only coming up for a year old. In fact, it's not even a year old. And already we have added a whole bunch of new features to PreSonus Sphere. We've added a lot of content. And we've added some new ways of being able to integrate workspaces into Studio One, for example. So that kind of symbiotic link between Studio One and the workspaces and PreSonus Sphere has improved. We're in early days yet. There's probably a lot more to come, and a lot more development is ongoing. As is the oft-quoted line, I think I say this quite often when I'm talking to PreSonus customers, and I pretty much usually say, look, our development team in Hamburg, work very, very hard on developing new features, new functionality for Studio One, and they are working at it all the time, and they are eager and excited to release new functions and features as time goes on. So, we don't kind of stop. Really, I'm pretty sure, actually, the guys over in Hamburg never sleep. I'm pretty sure that they are working on and dreaming up new stuff for PersonaSphere and Studio One and Notion all the time. I'm convinced that they don't ever actually stop. So I'm pretty sure, John, that you'll see a lot more new stuff coming in the foreseeable future. Can't tell you anything about it. Can't tell you what it is. Because I would get fired, I would lose my job. And I don't want to do that because I love my job, I love Personas, and I love working for them. So, not gonna spill the beans, unfortunately. Let's see. Peter Brooks says, if I load up a VST in Cakewalk, at the top of the VST, it gives me a tab to click on. So it shows me the path of that VST. It's very handy if you have more than one drive. I'm sure that is very handy. Have you seen the East-West Opus release? Looks interesting. I have seen stuff about it. I don't have East-West, but it does look very interesting. I agree. It looks very exciting what they're doing. East-West have been around for years. And for quite a long time, they were kind of like the big orchestral library for film composers. And a lot of film composers would swear by it. And in fact, a lot of film composers still do, and they still use those libraries. I'll give you some examples. Hans Zimmer is one of those that swears by East-West. David Arnold is another. I know that because I have a very close friend of mine called Stu Kennedy, who works very closely with David Arnold and has been involved in orchestrations for the Lord of the Ring films and a few other, big Hollywood blockbuster films. He's been involved in doing the orchestrations wherever David Arnold has been involved as the composer for those films. Stu is fantastic. He's an exceptionally talented composer. He and I are really great friends. We go back many, many years. And he's taught me a lot about orchestration. And I'm very proud to call him my friend. But yeah, he swears by East-West. And I have just kind of got him into the Spitfire stuff, which he's really excited by. But that is an interesting question. You guys are talking about Telegram. It's interesting that they've called that thing Telegram. Especially when, if you're old enough to be aware of the original Telegram technology. It's just kind of a little ironic. Let's see, WhatsApp I like WhatsApp. In fact, I've been on several WhatsApp calls today with people in the business that in the music industry that I work very closely with. Spitfire is great stuff. Yeah, the BBC SO is fantastic. I have that. I just haven't downloaded it yet, but I do actually have it. It's a massively gargantuan library. I have the BBC SO core. It's pretty big. I mean, it's not their full-fledged package, but it's pretty big and it takes quite a while to download. So, and I need to actually block out a little window of my weekend. And hopefully this weekend I'm going to actually get a little window of my weekend with all the other things I have to do. But hopefully I'm going to get a little block of time in that weekend to get the Spitfire stuff installed. Because I would like to do some videos on it, to be honest. So, yes. Any other questions? Thank you, Music to Motion. I appreciate that. The good folks at Spitfire have a great relationship with Presonus, by the way. You know, we kind of talk to each other. Their support team talks to us, and we talk to them. And so they sent us a whole bunch of really cool stuff, really cool promotional tutorial videos as well. What do I plan to do with BBC? I plan to make music with it. I'll be honest. Mika says the full Spitfire package comes on an SSD drive. Oh, I've heard that. Yes, I have heard that. And I can imagine that it would need to, actually, given the size of the darn thing. So, yeah. I'm going to spend some time with the core and see what it's like, see how good it is, and see what I can do orchestrationally. I mean, I did do, for the December 10th challenge, a couple of years ago, I did a song that used the Presonus Symphonic Orchestra, which was fun. The vocal on that song sucked, but it was a bit of a rush job. But the orchestration side of it was really fun to do with the Presonus Symphonic Orchestra. So it'd be quite fun to try and do something like that again, kind of hybrid jazz with orchestra. Yeah, with the BBC SO this time. That would be quite cool. And see how far I can push my computer doing it. But yeah, that's what I would like to do. Oh, you like the little guitar? That guitar over there? Yes, that little guitar is a clock, actually. It's not just a kind of like miniaturized, I think it's meant to be a miniaturized Telecaster, I think. But it is actually a clock. And it was bought for me for Christmas, in fact. My wife bought it for me. And in my new studio, in our brand new home, it's going to go up on the wall. At the moment, we can't do that. We're not allowed in this rental place. But in our new home, it's going to go up on the wall. It will take pride of place in my studio, and I'll be able to see what the time is much more easily than having to kind of crane my neck around the corner like that. Discuss on a future stream the art and craft of orchestration. That would require several streams. Maybe 10 shows, 15 shows maybe. Because I studied it at university. Except in the big band context. But we had to do some orchestral orchestration as well. When I was at university, because that's what I studied. I studied a joint degree in composition and audio engineering. And yeah, the orchestration classes were pretty full on. And you would do 6 to 8 weeks of orchestration classes. And then you'd have to write something for the university orchestra. In my case, I went a bit nuts at the end of my orchestration classes, and I decided, instead of just writing something for the university orchestra, I would write something that would combine my quartet with the university jazz orchestra and the university symphonic orchestra as well. So I went a little bit over the top, to be honest. But it was great fun to write something that massive. And and I very nearly pulled it off. It sounded very, very good. The end result was very, very good. I was very pleased with it, but because it was that massive and I was inexperienced with writing something that huge, I did get a little bit kind of swamped and overwhelmed by what I needed to do orchestrationally to make this piece really come alive and really be very, very interesting. Because, I mean, the orchestration is a challenge because you are dealing with tone color, you're dealing with voicings of chords across a whole bunch of instruments, and you're dealing with, moving melodies and counter melodies around through the orchestra to create interest, and then supporting parts to go with that as well. So it is definitely a challenge orchestrating something for an orchestra or for a big band. I think I have always said start small and work your way up. So before you start writing for a big band, start writing for, a larger ensemble. So for example, a rhythm section plus, I don't know, alto sax, 2 tenor saxes, a baritone sax, 2 trumpets, and a trombone, or something like that, or a couple of trombones. Kind of a larger kind of horn section with rhythm section, and kind of get to grips with the balances there between the brass and the reeds and the rhythm section on a smaller scale. And then you can start thinking about writing for a big band where you've got, 6 to 8 trumpets, 5 trombones, and maybe 8 or 9 saxophones, which is a bigger scale again. And then, going up to full symphonic orchestra, there's a lot to learn there because, at least with big band, yes, you're dealing with transposition, but you're only really dealing with 3 types of transposition: B-flat instruments, E-flat instruments, and concert pitch instruments. With orchestra, you're dealing with a whole plethora of different transpositions for different instruments. So, you're dealing with oboes and bassoons and cor anglais and French horns and, as well as other brass instruments like trumpets and trombones, but you're also dealing with tubas, baritone horns. There's a lot of different transposing instruments that are pitched in different keys, like the French horn is in F. Clarinet can be in B flat and A. And then you've got flutes and alto flutes. Flutes are at concert pitch. Alto flutes are in G. There's a whole, world of things to think about. So you're not just thinking about how you voice chords across all of those instruments, but how you make sure that you're staying within the tessitura or the register of those instruments, and also that you're writing in the correct transposition for those instruments as well. So yeah, orchestration is a massive, massive challenge. Marco says reviews are allowed at Persona's tutorials. Oh, you're talking about the tutorials group. It's really just a tutorials group. The idea of that group is to curate a library of Studio One tutorial content. So, that would be from, very, very beginner, bare bones basics, all the way through to kind of, advanced side chaining, parallel compression, and, other advanced mixing and mastering techniques. That's the idea behind that group, so that anybody that's a member of that group, if they're looking for a video on a particular subject, they can find it there fairly easily. What I want to do is go through that group and try and start categorizing all the videos. Now that you can do that in groups, you can categorize things by topics. So I want to try and categorize all the videos by topics so that, anytime anybody's looking for something on EQ in Studio One, they've got a whole plethora of different videos on EQ in Studio One from different presenters like me, Jonny Guy, Marcus Huskins, Lucas Rudzicka, and Joe Gilder, and Gregor, and a whole bunch of other good folks that make great Studio One content. So that's the idea behind that group. Bob's New York says Principles of Orchestration, Dover Books on Music, paperback, June 1st, 1964, by Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov. Yes, that is the book that I have. It's in my cupboard behind me, on orchestration. So that was required reading, required study for orchestration. And there's another book, and I'm trying to think who it was by. I can't remember. I really can't remember. That was like in way back last century. That was like 30 years ago. Who was that by? I can't remember. I can't remember the author of this other orchestration book. I'm sure it will smack me in the face at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'll go, "That's what that book was." Let's see. John Edgar says orchestration by Walter Piston was the Bible we used in my early university studies. How about you? Yeah, I'm trying to think what the other book was. It might have been that book, but I can't remember. It may well have been the same book, but I'm just stuck for memory. But certainly the Rimsky-Korsakov book was required reading. Michael says, do you know the engineer Rick Bonadio from Baton Rouge? No, I don't, actually. Leonard Bernstein! Yes! That would be the required reading. And he did a really great TV series as well on the orchestra and writing for orchestra, which is really, really great. He did a whole bunch of lectures for, I forget which university it was, that were available on TV. Leonard Bernstein is one of my favorite composers and conductors. I would have loved to have been in an orchestra with him as conductor, because he was one of those guys that pulled no punches. He was exceptionally professional. He worked incredibly hard at his craft, both as a composer and arranger and as a conductor. And he expected nothing less than 120% from every member of the orchestra. Nobody got left out. Nobody could escape Leonard Bernstein's attention. He had such a fantastic pair of ears for detail. You know, you couldn't get away with making mistakes. But yeah, Bernstein is a phenomenon. West Side Story is one of the great film scores and musicals ever written. I've played in London. I played drums for West Side Story. I was depping for somebody, and trust me, walking into the orchestra pit to play West Side Story, sat at the drums when you've never played it before and you have no rehearsal, that is tough. Trust me, it is tough reading the drum book for West Side Story. My other favorite drum book, by the way, is The Lion King, which was arranged by fantastic drummer and educator Tommy Igoe. And his drum parts are fantastic. They make that show. They really do. They bring those songs utterly to life. He did a great job orchestrating those parts for drums. So there you go. We've got like 8 minutes left. John Lake's asking, did I miss anything? No, you didn't really. You missed a lot of chat about orchestration, and I did some demonstrations on some musical devices that will help you with word painting your lyrics musically, providing a sonic bed for your lyrics. So changing mode, changing mood, and some ascending and descending bass lines, pedal points for building tension, both pedal points down low and inverse pedal points at the top, can be incredibly effective in ratcheting up the tension in your song. So yeah, feel free to go back and watch the replay and check out those demonstrations that I did. I hope you find them useful. Let's see. Marcos is away. Good night, Marcos. Peter Brick said, Chester Philharmonic Orchestra played some of my music and it sounded fantastic. Yeah, the university, Middlesex University, which is where I went to in London, they played 3 of my pieces. They played my one massive work, which was for my quartet with big band and full orchestra, that monster of a piece. So they played that, and they played another one of mine, which I wrote just for the orchestra, which featured most of... It mostly featured the strings and the woodwinds, with little interjections from the brass. Mostly I had brass with mutes, various types of mutes, from Harman mutes to bucket mutes, for that particular piece, because I was trying to evoke a particular mood. And I played around with some really dense, close chord clusters within the different sections of the orchestra, to create kind of like a big, rich texture for that piece. So they played that, and that was fun. So you will notice, for those of you that are asking in the chat, where's the super chat button? There isn't one. I demonetized the channel. Rewind a few shows ago, and I explained all. There's a very good reason why I demonetized my channel. The reason is to do with United States tax laws and the fact that I am not an American citizen or an American resident, and therefore I kind of felt a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of having to pay federal taxes to the US Federal Reserve, when, as much as I love the United States, and I love you folks very dearly, those of you that live in the United States, and I love your country very much. I have family there. So I'm a very frequent visitor. I'm a student of American history and American politics. But I kind of draw the line at kind of paying tax money to the US Federal Reserve. I don't think I should. And I don't think I should need to either. So, yeah. There is a way in which you can send me money if that is what you wish to do. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to go and find it. Find my little link. This really should be at the bottom of everything that I do, and I just haven't got round to doing that yet. So there you go. Let's just bring that back up. I'm going to minimize that. So there you go. In the chat there is a link to my PayPal. If you want to hit me up with some PayPal, you can do that there. You have a PayPal or Pivot Share folks can use to give you. The link is in the chat there. So you can get that there. Peter Brick says, Ben Folds composes is a big friend of mine. Would that be Ben Folds of the Ben Folds 5 by any chance? One of my favorite songwriters. Very, 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 very gifted songwriter, musician, piano player. So yes, if that's who you're talking about, awesome. I would love to get to know Ben. I'd love to pick his brains about harmony in particular. And kind of see where he sits on kind of extended harmony. That'd be quite cool. So there we go. We are almost out of time. We've got 2 more minutes. So if somebody has a last minute question that they'd like to get in, then you can do. That's funny, John. That's funny. I like that. Yeah, so if anyone has a last minute question, then we can get one more question in, and then it will be good night time. But if not, then we will end the show. So you have 90 seconds, folks. I bet he is very cool. I bet he has a heck of a sense of humor as well. He comes across always as being the kind of guy that has some fun things to say. So yeah, I bet he's funny. Okay, Mika's decided that he's going to ask the world's most loaded question. Can one find the meaning of life via music? Yes, you can, providing your music is composed of exactly 42 notes. If your music is composed of exactly 42 notes, then you will have found the meaning of life within music. So there you go. Hope you appreciate the answer that I gave you, because it is the only answer to that question, really, to be honest, Mika. Thank you, Music Motion. I appreciate that. That is very kind, very generous. All right, folks, I'm going to play you out with a song that I am kind of playing around with. It's in a style of music that I have never really written in, because I like to stretch myself and challenge myself a little bit every now and then. So this has no title. At the moment, it's just a groove. It's just a little bit bare bones, but hopefully it's going to work its way into a song eventually, and will develop a little bit harmonically. Maybe at the moment it's only got 2 chords, but yeah, I'm kind of working on it, and I will play you out with that. And with that, folks, I'll bid you a very good night. Good night.